Have you noticed that movie trailers kind of suck now? Like, what was the last time you actually enjoyed watching trailers in a movie theater or online? Don't they all just seem the same now? Am I just romanticizing my childhood and projecting the way the world feels bleak and gray when you become an adult and your brain starts to cook and you have to like file taxes and try to find an apartment for less than 80% of your income and shit onto trailers? No, that can be. So, in true Shashatainment fashion, instead of just being normal about any thought or observation I might have, I spent like a month researching all of this and even talked to some people who actually make trailers for a living. I know, it's a shocker. This YouTube yapper serves gossip the old-fashioned way. So huge thanks to Derek Liu, Dave Rosenthal, and Phil DeCord, actual professionals who have either previously worked or currently work in the trailer industry, for sitting down with me and letting us all get a peek behind the production curtain. So why have trailers been kinda meh recently? Who, or specifically what, caused the downfall of the movie trailer? Also, I'm now doing channel memberships for anyone who wants to help out the channel and support my bourgeois habits of drinking coffee, eating cake, and dressing up for visual's sake. Not in this video though. I'm not even putting a bald cap on. So if you want to do that, stay tuned for the end of the video or get all of the infos from the pinned comment. Okay, cue the montage.
You've got one chance to entice a busy, distracted viewer and get your message across before they move on to their next tweet, email, or kitten video.
Now lately, trailers have become way different than they used to be.
I know a lot of people now who refuse to watch trailers for movies anymore because they think it reveals too much.
Movie trailers now, they're kind of awful, right?
In a world where trailers still had the voiceover.
What even is a trailer? Or I should say, why even is a trailer? Because of ticket sales. Pioneered in 1913 by Niels Granlund, a PR/marketing guy who was working for the founder of MGM Studios, Marcus Loew. Trailers got their name because they were originally, in fact, trailing movies. And the first ever trailer was actually just a short montage of the rehearsals of The Pleasure Seekers, the Broadway performance. But why would you play it afterwards? I mean, the movie's over, everyone has already left. Wrong. Up until the 1930s, you would actually pull up to a movie theater, pay an entrance fee, and just watch every movie scheduled for that day. Thus, going to the movies was often like a full day event, and staying for one feature and one feature only was kind of rare. So in reality, trailers were playing in between the screenings. It was only after the one-time entrance fee was abolished due to the Great Depression influencing the market that trailers started playing before the movie. That first experiment I mentioned was a success, so naturally trailers sparked into a blooming industry and got monopolized. You know, yet another capitalism win. So a mere 6 years after the first ever trailer aired, in 1919, the National Screen Service was founded. The NSS was like an all-rounder company that movie studios and theaters could commission for virtually all types of promotional material, as well as promotional efforts themselves, from like posters to trailers. This was a lot easier than doing it in-house, so a lot of the major players quickly handed the work over to the NSS. To be precise, so many theaters and studios did that in 1955, the NSS was broken up in court for monopolizing the movie advertising industry. You know how much monopolizing you have to do in order for the US Supreme Court to side with those advocating against it? An actual fuck ton of monopolizing. Of course, there were exceptions, but due to this very monopoly, a lot of the trailers produced between the 1930s and the 1960s feel very formulaic. Here's how Havens describes them. They made outrageous claims and boasted about their film's use of all the latest technology.
The screen has never known a love story to compare with this.
Cries out the trailer of Gone with the Wind. The trailer for Frankenstein even warns that it could
shock women into uncontrolled hysteria.
These trailers also featured montages of one-liners outlining the plot or dramatic entrances introducing the characters. Narration akin to the pitch of a laundry detergent salesman. Meet blah blah blah, the lovable protagonist of the story, would further clarify the plot. Finally, up to half the trailer could be dedicated to bragging about each film's star-studded cast of Oscar winners. People often credit auteur-style trailers for revolutionizing the art of short-form movie promotion, and I cannot even blame them. I mean, I am a huge fan of Hitchcock just walking around the filming lot instead of showcasing any actual movie footage, but there is something that highbrow cinema bros love to omit, namely the fact that auteur-style trailers that are heavily influenced by the director's vision or an artist's carefully curated concept have been and remain a rather obscure thing reserved for those with influence and power. What did actually revolutionize the movie trailer was the blockbuster. As DiStefano puts it, the market changed again in the 1970s to promote Steven Spielberg's Jaws, the world's first summer blockbuster. That film's subsequent success helped solidify the advertising model still widely prevalent in today's trailer strategy. Customized trailers to be viewed during primetime hours of television viewership and then, to the point of near oversaturation, inundate the market with these trailers prior to the film's release under the blanket hope that potential consumers know of only one movie opening that weekend and their only plan for that weekend will to be see that one movie. This, finding something that works and milking that fucking cow until it drops dead right on the marketing exec's heads, crushing the profits and hopes of a quarterly bonus under its weight, is actually quite a common occurrence. Have you ever heard this voice?
In a world.
That's Don LaFontaine, a trailer voiceover legend that is responsible for some of the most iconic inner worlds of the 70s and 80s. The whole "in a world" tagline was used so much that it became a meme within pop culture, inspiring many great meta trailers and even this ad.
So to help tell her story, we hired that announcer guy from the movies.
When the storm hit, both our cars were totally underwater.
In a world where both of our cars were totally underwater.
Same, for example, can be seen in the case of the so-called Inception boom or Inception Bram, pioneered by, you'll never fucking guess, The Inception.
What's the most resilient parasite? An idea.
As well as the sad/creepy cover of a pop song that has a female vocalist or a children's choir, like in the trailer for The Social Network.
So whether it's like the Inception, the like Brom, which all of a sudden all these action movie trailers have the Brom, and then the dark cover music, which actually everyone cites The Social Network for the cover of Creep, but the Gears of War Mad World trailer actually predates that one, but I think because game trailers are not as prestigious as movies, I think the games industry has a chip on its shoulder about how it's viewed, even though it's like this enormous industry that everyone, including adults, middle-aged and up, engage with. But I think that it doesn't get that clout. But dark cover songs became a thing. And then there was certainly amount of time where there were lots of sound design-y sort of trailers where it's the music cuts out and then it's boom, and then cuts back to the music. And then they're like, okay, people are getting tired of dark cover songs. Let's just use the original song, but then remix it. So you have the Knives Out trailer with, I think, Sinatra, I'm Gonna Live Until I Die. That's a really nice example.
And also these trends that take hold. For a while it was the slow remix of a song with a female voice.
Children's choir as well.
Children's choir. It's that it just gets old. I mean, I get it. It gets old quickly though, but they keep doing it because people keep liking it. And now the trend is some sort of trailerization of a song that we all know and love. And it can be just as bare as just taking the lyrics from a song and slapping them into something completely unrelated. And again, it's one client said to us, music-wise, we need something that no one has heard, but everyone recognizes. And it's kind of okay, Sure, but that's why, a lot of these 80s songs are coming back in with remixes. And, they're very clever and they're very good. But it's kind of tired. For me, you see a big budget movie and all of a sudden there's a song that, oh, okay, so they took this and they added some of that to it and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, it's not bad. It's just kind of like, I've seen it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've seen more and more happening, the trends lasting longer and longer. I mean, you still get every once in a while, you get a slow female cover of a song. And I'm guilty of myself using them because sometimes they work.
So, as much as the highbrow asshole in me hates to admit it, trailers have historically been profit-driven and commercial at heart. After the NSS monopoly was dismantled, the so-called trailer houses started popping up. No, not these trailer houses, but advertising agencies that specialize in creating all kinds of trailers. Social media or theater previews, TV spots, teasers. You name it, they'll make it. And the inherent commercial nature of the trailers is not just me blaming everything on capitalism. For instance, when talking about his work in the movie trailer industry, editor Rick Thomas describes it as constantly balancing the needs of the client with finding interesting ways to represent the film in the short form and ultimately persuade people into the theaters or to tune in at home.
And that relates to, I think, one of your questions that's going to be coming up about trailers is this wonderful mixture of art and commerce. It's not just pure art, it serves a purpose. I work in the service industry, even though I feel like it's also, there's a lot of art to it. Sometimes the marketing director at the studio has very specific demands or needs, or the director wants very specific things, or, in the case of, my former partner, Paul cut this trailer for Seven, and Brad Pitt was dating Gwyneth Paltrow at the time, and Brad Pitt specifically said she had to be in the trailer. You're trying to appease all sorts of different little groups to put this thing together, still feel like it's artistic, and still achieve the goal of having people go, yes, I want to go see that. I need to see that.
Same sentiment about trailer editing being a service first and foremost is expressed by Mark Woolen, a longtime editor himself and the founder of MWA Trailers. As he states in a Wired interview, "It's not about me putting my own imprint on the work. I'm handling the director's material, and it should reflect their work and represent that." Today, most of the trailers that you see are edited by trailer editors working for trailer houses, and the director often has close to no control over what the trailer is going to look like.
Very few directors, for better or for worse, get involved with the trailers. And also, I know film editors who work on feature films, and sometimes maybe it's a low budget indie, they'll say, director will say, hey, can you make the trailer too? And they're like, get a trailer editor. It's a totally different thing. But yeah, the directors, it depends on the project. Some get more involved than others. Like Christopher Nolan, I think, has a pretty tight grip on his trailers. Like what is allowed to go in, what isn't. But usually they get involved fairly late in the process, where like there's some versions that have been worked on for a while and it's okay, now it's time to bring in the director and see what they say. But sometimes the director never gets a say.
When discussing the aforementioned Psycho trailer, Judge says that film trailers in the contemporary space are all pretty standard and boring, especially for mainstream Hollywood productions. Action movies will have a quote-unquote epic score with explosions cut between humorous one-liners. Horror movies will have the occasional cut to black with a sound bridge over the top to try and increase tension before a badly constructed jump scare. You know the drill. It seems really simple. At some magical point after the dismantlement of the NSS monopoly, but before trailer houses took over the market, we used to have fun, but now we don't. I mean, case solved, it's those damn editors that are to blame. Let's chase them all down and force them to make better trailers. But like almost all things in life, it's really much more complicated than that. So grab some popcorn and let's figure out whether people who wake up in a cold sweat dreaming of Avid timelines are really at fault.
In a world where everyone's afraid of spoilers.
As Dropkin Grossi writes for MovieWeb, today trailers give away too much of the movie, whether it be the best jump scares or the biggest laughs. And that's not an uncommon sentiment. For example, some of the most popular comments under an interview with a trailer expert talk about trailers that summarize the whole movie make it unnecessary to watch the goddamn thing. There are heaps of opinion pieces talking about modern day trailers taking away from the enjoyment you can get out of a movie by way of showing you too much. As part of my research, I interviewed a fan trailer editor, somebody who makes trailers out of pre-existing movies as a hobby, and when talking about spoilers, he said the following: yeah, spoilers in trailers is a massive issue. The art behind a trailer is that you leave the viewer wanting more, so why show them everything? It's dumb, and I hope producers have learned it is not a smart way to market their films. And that's not even an outsider-only sentiment. The trailer for Kingsman: The Golden Circle famously, or not so famously, that depends on what you were up to in 2017, reveals a plot point that was supposed to be an unexpected twist. Namely, the fact that a character that supposedly dies in the first movie is actually alive. Matthew Vaughn, the director of said movie, has been quite vocal about disliking this decision, stating the following to IGN: well, I'm not in charge of marketing. The thinking about that was stupidity, to be blunt. I begged the studio not to reveal it, because it's the whole driving force of the first act, and if you didn't know that scene, it would have made the whole audience gasp. So you have to ask the lovely marketing guys, because I think their job is to open the movie and don't really care about the experience of the movie. So, why would you put that into the trailer? Well, Vaughn was not far off. It's all done in the interest of marketing.
Part of the dilemma, I don't think it's necessarily true. I don't think trailers give away too much all the time. Sometimes they do, though. Sometimes it's almost prescribed because, years ago I worked on a trailer. We did two versions. We did one that was much more of a teaser, one that threw the whole kitchen sink in there. And the studio did what they do is they tested both pieces with a test audience. And someone said, look, the numbers show the one that had more in it tested higher, therefore we finished that. And you can't really argue against that type. We can debate whether that's an accurate way to create a film trailer, but in their mind, the numbers show that more people liked the trailer that had more in it. Therefore, that's what we're going to put out in the world.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's more about just the data that's been collected. More is more.
Yeah.
And again, they're not often as concerned with the film going experience as they are with getting the people in to see the movie and getting the money and monetizing this thing that they made an investment on.
I know it seems ultra counterintuitive to put spoilers into a thing that it's supposed to get you interested in movies. A form of art that is more often than not appreciated for, among other things, the stories it tells. However, and there is a however, the topic of spoilers is not as black and white as some may think. The so-called spoiler phobia has existed and been the topic of discussion for centuries at this point, with James Green, an English literature researcher who was awarded a PhD by the University of Exeter, claiming that it originated in the Victorian times. In his piece for Quartz magazine, Green talks about the novelist Wilkie Collins, who requested that critics discuss his novel The Woman in White without revealing too much of the plot. If the critic tells it at all, in any way whatever, is he doing a service to the stories by destroying beforehand two main elements in the attraction of all stories? The interest of curiosity and the excitement of surprise. Surprisingly, the plea was heard, and then other authors tried to follow in Collins's footsteps, provoking the now age-old question. Many questioned whether a novel that could be spoiled was worth reading, and whether revealing details in this way really did have a negative effect on the reading experience. The Examiner asked how a novel's plot is to be at the same time concealed and criticized. But what qualifies as a spoiler? While it is relatively clear in the case of the second Kingsman movie, oftentimes determining whether this or that tidbit of information fits into the spoiler category maybe quite complicated, especially considering the fact that we live in a largely spoiler-phobic society. I mean, the definitions of spoiler and spoiler phobia on Urban Dictionary date back to the early 2000s. I was like still learning how to read, and people on the internet were already arguing about how much of the plot you can reveal when discussing the next hot new thing. And it has arguably gotten worse. I mean, even the piece entitled "Why It Is Time to Get Over Our Spoiler Phobia" has spoiler warnings in the tagline. But back to trying to figure out what a spoiler actually is. Like, would it be a spoiler to tell you that Donkey from Shrek shags the dragon? Has enough time passed already? Or is it not plot defining enough?
And the problem is when you get your definition of spoilers, like where's the line for what a spoiler is? So there are different things you can define as a spoiler. So one thing could be plot elements. And the thing I say in my essay is that when you can watch the trailer and then just have this really detailed view of what the timeline of the exact order of events in the movie are, then of course that feels like you've watched the whole thing, even if it's not necessarily true.
If we, once again, turn to the 2005 Urban Dictionary definition by Theon 1X Born, it goes a little something like this. When someone reveals a previously unknown aspect of something which you likely would have rather learned on your own. You can also huff and puff about using Urban Dictionary as a source, but we're discussing spoilers, for fuck's sake. Not exactly saving lives, you know. This being the most popular out of literal pages upon pages upon pages of definitions gives us an overview of the average person's idea of what a spoiler is. A piece of information that supposedly takes away from one's enjoyment via revealing information that one would rather learn or experience oneself. This definition doesn't really narrow it down, does it? For example, me telling you that the other students kill Bunny in The Secret History would hardly be a spoiler, considering that's what the first few pages of the book talk about, but it can actually fit the definition of a spoiler. For instance, if you prefer to go into books cold turkey, and therefore any tidbit of information might be too much for you. Spoilers, therefore, are largely in the eye of the beholder. Before, as noted by Sarah Kozlov, the ability to spoil things or avoid spoilers by way of being among the first few people to, for example, see a new movie or read a new book was largely dependent on class and one's position within societal hierarchy. Those with the money, time, freedom, and motivation to stay on top of current releases or buy new hardcovers may obtain an experience denied to those who have to wait for library copies or cheaper venues. So the power to spoil lies disproportionately in the hands of those with elite access, like the critic, while anxiety about being deprived of an untainted experience affects people with less access. In a similar vein, when recalling the early internet days of Star Trek discourse, Mel Taylor says, "A spoiler is a way to talk, and indeed, low-key brag about having seen a cultural product." Nowadays, the line is not as clear. I mean, as soon as something is on the internet, anyone can get it, and for free, if they try hard enough. As Mel Taylor theorizes, nowadays spoilers have less to do with class and more with social capital. The purpose of a spoiler warning is then the prestige of experiencing important cultural moments. Spoiler warnings protect people from missing out, and that function has nothing to do with politeness, but with preserving social capital, or for those non-economist geeks out there, popularity. The author then goes on to point out how when the hype for something dies down, the degree to which people care about spoilers and spoiler warnings for that thing dies down with it. Thus, whether something is a spoiler is not only highly influenced by our personal preferences, but also by the hype, no matter how widespread or local, as well as the social capital you get from wielding the spoiler sword over your friends and random internet strangers' heads. Due to this very issue, the scary, experience-ruining spoilers are waiting for poor, unsuspecting us at every corner. As, for example, Lucier points out, if you want to go into a movie completely clean, or as clean as possible, trailers are the worst thing you can watch. Also, you should avoid social media, the internet, and talking to anyone in general. So if people are decking left and right to try to avoid seeing anything that even loosely qualifies as a spoiler, why do marketing guys keep putting those same spoilers into the literal trailer? Do they want to ruin any and all enjoyment you can get out of a movie now? Question mark? I don't think so, at least. And I'll tell you more, spoilers don't even necessarily spoil stories. This study by Levitt and Kristenfeld, for example, found that people actually enjoyed reading short stories that were spoiled to them more than those that were not. And there's anecdotal evidence to back it up. As Kozlov notes, twist stories work via a gimmick. They withhold information to misdirect us, the way a magician performs a trick. If part of the pleasure of consuming a narrative is thinking we're smart enough to solve an enigma, successful twists rock us back on our heels and prove that we readers are not as perceptive as we thought we were, and the author/magician is fully in charge. Even with such limited cases, what I most want to do with twists is go back, rewatch, and figure out where and how the unreliable narrator led me astray. My enjoyment of a story is not ruined by knowing ahead of the time the information that's been so zealously kept hidden. Other researchers, like Johnson and Rosenbaum, failed to recreate these results and found that there was, in fact, a decrease in enjoyment for spoiled narratives, and suggested that it depends on the type and genre of entertainment. Daniel and Katz then claimed that the effects of spoilers on enjoyment are not universal and may depend upon a number of factors. Even evidence from the movie industry is inconsistent. Riom and colleagues pose that trailers lower the degree of plot uncertainty, which in turn has a positive effect on box office revenue, while Lee and colleagues have found the opposite to be true.
So I think that take of people want to know what they're going to get into is very valid, and it still gets proven out because people will see a movie even if it's really spoilery.
The results of the aforementioned research by Johnson and colleagues vary greatly between genres. For instance, spoiled comedies were less enjoyable, while spoiled fantastic thrillers were more enjoyable, and also depend on the severity of the spoiler in relation to the overarching narrative. So, do spoilery trailers ruin movies? What, you're waiting for me to answer the question that the researchers literally focused on this very topic are yet to even shakily agree on? Me? The issue of trailers that supposedly show too much is not a recent one. Here's a bit of the Fresh Air radio show from 2003. So over 2 decades ago now.
Let's start with a question that everyone wants to know, which is, why do coming attractions so often give away so much of the plot, or so many of the jokes, or so many of the action high points of the film? So often people, after seeing coming attractions, say that they feel like they've already seen the movie.
I think because, it is a business and things are kind of so market driven, and there's a big investment that studios are trying to recoup, and there's a lot riding on that opening weekend, that they have to rely on research testing as a tool as to what elements are going to make people go see this movie. And so the more of those elements you put in, the higher the testing scores go, and therefore
it ends up in the trailer.
In a piece entitled "All Trailers Are Spoilers Now," Lussier poses that trailers have not actually become more spoilery. Rather, the internet gave us the opportunity to re-watch them time after time, analyzing everything shot by shot. At the same time, filmmakers, especially when they're a part of huge franchises with long histories, increasingly add Easter eggs or cameos to their films. The inclusion of these extra bits for fans also encourages going through everything with a microscope. No one wants to feel left out of a joke, and there is a definitive rush when you notice something not everyone is going to see. That attention to detail has changed everything. In the past, marketing was a passing thing. There was nowhere for you to easily watch a trailer for Planet of the Apes or The Usual Suspects over and over before the film was released. But now, fans not only pay more attention to marketing, they sit on it and digest it. And I'm inclined to partially agree. Have you ever seen trailers for movies from, say, the 70s? A lot of them just literally tell you what's going to happen, point by point. It's just that the audience, A, was not as deeply invested into trailers, B, did not have the resources to go through them frame by frame, and C, the intensity of the marketing was also lower than it is now. Also, the hysteria surrounding spoilers was not as rampant, and if it was, it's not well documented.
I think there have always been trailers that give away way too much of the movie from the very beginning. I mean, you watch like really early trailers, they're just showing scenes from the end. They're telling you what's going to happen pretty literally. I mean, for a lot of people, frankly, it clearly isn't a problem. One of the classic spoilerly trailers is Castaway. One of the biggest ways you can make people feel like they're being spoiled is if you pose a big question in your trailer. So Castaway, the big question is, will he get off the island? And then at the end of the trailer, like, oh, he gets off the island. It's like literally the end shot of the film. The very last shot of the film is in that trailer. And that movie did great. Sold tons and tons of tickets, made millions of dollars. And the director, Robert Zemeckis, basically says that people want to know what they're going to get when they go see the movie.
Marvel trailers, for one, probably get brought up more than any others when it comes to discussing the spoiler-filled madness. But this, I'd say, does not accurately reflect reality, seeing as the dedicated core fan base consists exactly of the type of people that go through everything shot by shot. And spoiler phobia is also a particularly wild beast in those scary comic regions. I also feel like the way Marvel viewed spoiler phobia impacted the broader culture deserves a video of its own.
And also, the thing to remember is that the internet is not the real world necessarily, or certainly the comment sections aren't. Because we have Marvel films getting hundreds of millions of views, so clearly that's a lot of people. But I think that a lot of people in comments and forums, well, not really forums anymore, but in the comment sections of things complain, oh, trailers are so spoilery. These are like the hardest of the hardcore people watching all of these things, like super, like gamers, movie fans. Those are like the super duper, like massive black hole hardcore fans.
But now, I'd rather not see spoilers. I'd rather be left with questions. I mean, even as late as, even like the latest Marvel movie that's coming, Captain America: New World Order.
So if you watch the Black Panther trailer, you watch even, I think, the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer, we don't know what the plot is and what they're trying to do, but what you do know are things like, oh, this Spider-Man shows up, or this character shows up, this set piece moment happens, or Thor Ragnarok, the Hulk is in it. That's a big reveal in that film, and they spoil that, which is not like a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, but it is a thing that is maybe like a VFX thing or a set piece moment.
So why the spoilers then? Because they just keep testing the best with focus groups. And marketing guys are not exactly prone to taking a lot of risks or going for artistic vision in high-stakes situations, especially not when they have higher-ups and studios to answer to. The current day marketing cycle is one long bitch, and retention is critical. Like, how the fuck are you going to get butts in seats if people forget all about your movie within like minutes of watching the trailer? The more you show, the more and longer people will remember. And marketing guys and trailer editors are just trying to do their jobs the best they can. In the previously mentioned Wired piece, Wolin has the following exchange with the interviewer. A lot of people think trailers today give away too much. I tend to agree. You probably have to ask, why is that? Why is that? The studios want to have one weekend to capture the largest number of people. As I understand it, the data they get back is that people want to know more story. They want to know more before they make an investment. Now, it may be not what you, me, or the readers of your magazine consider the right approach, but that's what they've come to.
I mean, personally, I try not to do it, but then sometimes you see like the competition is doing it, and you're like, oh, well, if that's the client's responding to that, then I kind of have to keep up with that. I mean, I can't just not use the entire end of this movie because I don't want to spoil it. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. But it's one of those things, again, it's like, if it can be avoided, it should be.
No trailer editor that I ever met wants to spoil the film. And if I ever see a trailer that just seems to just keep on going and keep on packing things in, then my impression is that there's probably someone higher up who kind of insecure about this thing that they've put hundreds of millions of dollars into maybe, and they're like, if we don't show this, then they won't look good, or and I think they'll actually undermine themselves. But like, I guess I think it's usually a sign of insecurity, but also I admit that there is like a galaxy brain marketing out there probably or marketing galaxy brain out there who probably knows way more than me. And they're like, well, Derek, we have this much money at stake. We have to do X, Y, Z in order to sell this. I mean, one of the big parts with movie trailers, big parts of the movie trailer industry, the way they work is that they do a lot of focus group testing, which is why a lot of movie trailers end up with so many spoilers, because what they do is they bring in a whole bunch of people and they show them all these different versions of the trailer and they ask them which one they liked. They'll even break it down shot by shot, say which shots were your favorite from this trailer or this TV spot. And if there's one TV spot that's not testing well, they'll say, well, this 40% of people liked this shot in this TV spot, put this one in here because it's not doing well, so then this will automatically be better, which is like not how you make art, but it might work according to the data, but I don't like that. Like, that's not fun for me as an editor.
The testing process is imperfect because sometimes, I remember there was a teaser that my partner cut for the first Bad Boys movie. Mm-hmm. And there are some quick edits in there where it's like a gun, an eye, Mark Lawrence, like a girl, whatever. They work together as a series of images that create an emotional response. But when you're filling out paperwork at a test screening and they're like, did you like the shot of the eye? Did you like the shot of the car? When you start breaking it down into its components, people won't necessarily remember specific shots, but they remember, oh, there was that really exciting part where that flurry of images happened. So it's hard to quantify. It's not the same as like, did you like the scene where this happened? Because the one thing we're trying to do nowadays, which is a good trend, is play something out. Have a moment really resonate and stick and land and play something out for like 10, 15 seconds and really live in that moment, as opposed to just going flurry of images, which has its place. But sometimes you can create a vibe that people love, but they won't be able to describe it when filling out a test research paperwork. They'll know that they enjoyed it, it was exciting, they want to see it, but they won't say, oh, I like the fact that the car to the gun to the kiss to the explosion made me feel this way or that way. It's hard for them to articulate because you're asking someone to describe something very subjective, and it's just a weird way of trying to get data out of something that's a little bit more slippery.
Yeah, especially with a fleeting impression. Like, if I was to fill out a questionnaire of like, did you like that shot with the eye? I would be like, what fucking shot with the eye? What do you mean? Like, I don't remember.
But you probably remember there was that cool thing in between you remember, between the Will Smith and the Martin Lawrence car, there was that cool imagery. You didn't know, it goes by very quickly, and that's what's happened with sort of, with the MTV generation, as we called it. We were allowed to do things a lot faster, and you get it, you feel it. You just won't be able to sit down and describe what you saw as specifically as the way you felt it.
I would say I think people at the agency side will always err on selling less because we believe in the product. We don't want to give away everything. I think, the comment that we get from our friends and family on our work so often is, why did you give away everything? Which is like a knife to our heart because we're like, no, that's not our intention. But I think what happens sometimes on the studio side is that they want to guarantee that the trailer is effective. And so they'll run testing, market research on the trailer itself. And fortunately or unfortunately, the only way you can really test a trailer is like, how much information did you get from it, right? What do people remember? How much of the story do they understand? And so sometimes a higher testing trailer means we've actually told more of the story so that you understand it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that was our intention.
So who's to blame? Who killed the trailer if not the trailer editors? The marketing guys? Once again, it is a little more complicated than that.
In a world where movie tickets are expensive as shit,
What was the last time that you've been to a cinema? It's kind of a dying thing. Like, even pre-COVID numbers of 2019 were close or actually lower than those of the 90s and the 2000s. For example, in the US, the total number of ticket sales dropped from 1.5 billion to 1.2 billion between 2002 and 2019, and from 163 million to 118 million of yearly cinema visits in Germany. The majority of research on movie-going habits points to ticket prices as the deciding factor. Now, as per the numbers, the average price of a cinema ticket stood at about $11 in the US in 2023, and Net claims that the average ticket price ranges from $9 to $15 depending on the state. The number thrown around most often ranges from $10 to $12, like here in the research published by Laura Carollo. There is, however, quite a big problem with that, namely the fact that it literally sent my American best friend into a spiral.
Okay, so before finding out that statistic, my initial guess was in fact $20 to $25. I could not tell you the last movie I have gone and seen without a voucher or a deal that costs less than $20 in the past decade. I want to say when Catching Fire came out in like whatever that was, 2013, I saw that movie for like $18.75. Granted, I do come from one of the more expensive states in the United States, but that's not where I got my bachelor's degree or lived afterwards. That place was fairly inexpensive. And, you know, I'll eat my fucking shorts like Bart Simpson if you can find me tickets that are like $6 to $10, but I find it incredibly hard to believe that this marketing firm isn't including free entry for children under 3 and like 6 to 12-year-olds tickets in this estimation, which is much, much lower. Because everyone I know doesn't go to the movie theaters anymore because it's fucking expensive, especially since they got those big-ass recliner seats that don't even work half the time. I don't know if you want more. That's all I got.
How was it before the recliner seats?
I wasn't buying my own movie tickets because I was a child. I was like under the age of like 11. So I don't fucking know. I mentioned I grew up in a very rich state in the United States. We were early adopters of the gentrification chairs. So I don't have a memory of purchasing tickets before the gentrification chairs, really. I don't know, maybe like $16 if I went to go see a matinee when I was 13. But that's a matinee. Yeah, for me. Not including snacks. Yeah. So for a show in the middle of the day. I think that's like how much I saw Mad Max Fury Road for when it came out. But yeah, that might have been $17.
I've heard the same point when interviewing actual industry professionals.
And like I love taking my kids to the movies, and we live close to Universal Studios. So if I'm going to take the kids to the movies, I'm either going to take an Uber there or I'm going to drive there, so there's parking. They're going to want popcorn, all that stuff. There's the food. The tickets themselves cost money. There's talk of doing a new pricing plan where you can get premium seats for more money. It's a night. It's, you know, you're dropping a lot of change for a wonderful night at the movies. So that's why, and you know, people who can afford it, it's great. But again, there's people on the fence saying like, I can't just take my kids to the movies every weekend. It's a costly adventure, you know?
Yeah.
Well, there's always going to be that, but I hope that they can create more avenues to allow people of all different financial situations to get access. I think this is also the same problem with like sports in America. You know, it used to be a dad could take his kid to the baseball game, have a hot dog and a beer or something, and not break the bank. And nowadays that's virtually impossible to go. Any major sporting event now is a huge financial investment. I mean, there was an article that came out recently that I think AMC and one of the other theater chains, they are going to be spending over $2 billion over the next few years to revamp all their theaters, which is wonderful. And again, I love the theater going experience, but that will probably come at a jack up price for tickets. Ticket price will go up. They'll say, well, look, we just renovated all of our theaters. They're not doing this for free. That will come at a cost that we'll have to pay at some point. But I digress.
And the $10 to $12 estimate didn't resonate with my American audience here on YouTube either. So naturally, I did some low-level, questionable quality research. The aforementioned number from Laura Carollo puts an average AMC movie ticket at about $11.90 in the US. And I'll of course need to know that this number refers to 2023, so let's throw, say, 4% on top of that to adjust for inflation with some room to spare. This brings us to $12.40, which again seems too low to be true. I looked up for highest and for lowest cost of living cities as per Cost of Living Index calculated by Council for Community and Economic Research, and then checked prices for standard screenings at AMC theaters in those cities. So I went through 4 most expensive cities specifically, and 4 least expensive cities. And I went on Fandango. I had to use a fucking VPN. I'm not saying that anyone should sponsor me, but they like really should. And I looked for movie screenings with the same specifications on October 14th, 6 to 8 p.m. Same movie, Joker, same specifications. There were some variations, obviously, because some of them are like, we're not doing a laser at AMC, whatever the fuck that is.
It's their version of IMAX, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wish they didn't do it. That would make my life easier. So even with the fluctuations, the average price in an expensive city came out to be $18.8, and that's without fees. I didn't calculate the fees because some states don't have fees, so I was like, okay, we're going no fees apparently. And the average price in a not expensive and actually cheap city came out to be $13.5. The average between those came out to be $16. I found one ticket that was under $10. I would say even under like 13. And that was no reserved seating, no laser, no sleep, no fear.
I mean, I thought it was bullshit when I first heard it, so I didn't believe it to begin with because I bought movie tickets in the United States. Yeah, no one goes to the movies anymore. It's too expensive.
Do you feel vindicated by my bad methodology research?
I mean, like, vaguely, I knew I was right.
But why am I so zoned in on ticket prices in the US? I mean, I've never even been there. Well, that's because the majority of the movies dominating the market in a lot of countries, the one I live in included, are US made. And domestic opening weekend continues to be the major metric for all theatrical releases.
They have to get butts and seats. It has to be done for the opening weekend, because that's the biggest calculation. Because after that, it's word of mouth. Even if you have a crappy movie, if people like it, like a cult film, word of mouth will be good, you know. But they have to get butts and seats, and they'll do whatever it takes to do that. And if that means shaving everything to meet a certain kind of testing audience, then that's what they'll do, you know. And I get it from a business standpoint, absolutely.
Here's the thing. Accurately predicting a movie's success is, frankly speaking, hard as fuck to do. As Barry Gunter puts it in Predicting Movie Success at the Box Office, there's a famous quote by the celebrated Hollywood screenwriter William Goldman that nobody knows anything in the film world when it comes to predicting a successful movie. You can have a great script, stunning cinematography, a top director, and Hollywood's best paid and most popular actors in starring roles, but still a movie can bomb at the box office.
In a world where you have to get butts in seats.
As Sontag explains it, then came the catastrophic rise in production costs in the 1980s, which secured the worldwide reimposition of industry standards of making and distributing films on a far more coercive, this time truly global scale. Soaring production costs meant that a film had to make a lot of money right away, in the first month of its release, if it was to be profitable at all. The opening weekend, then, remains the most accurate way of predicting whether the movie is going to be profitable, or at least break even, considering that it has an economically and statistically significant effect on a movie's eventual performance. I'll tell you more, the first week as a whole tends to be the biggest one in regards to revenue, as per Stephen Follows. Let me grab the board for a visual here. And the total box office domestic graphs usually look something like this for wide releases. For instance, Barbie's opening weekend clocked in at around 162 million, while the second weekend only totaled to 93. And this decrease is actually way less dramatic than that of most movies, like, say, The Oppenheimer, that was actually released on the same day. So, seeing as movies typically generate anywhere from 1/5 to 1/3 of their total domestic revenue within the first weekend, their ability to break even, which is usually around like 2.5 times of the movie production budget, can be estimated after those nerve-filled 3 days. Now combine this with the decline of movie-going due to the fact that people, just cannot afford regular cinema visits anymore, and you will get a truly nasty stink bomb up the director's pants. With less and less people going to the movies, competition for their attention becomes tougher and tougher, and the trailer industry becomes more and more constricting. You can't exactly take risks with investors breathing down your neck and trying to make sure they will get a return on their investment. Going back to not taking risks, because that's kind of like what I've stumbled upon directly or indirectly while doing all sorts of research. Would you say that, like, at least from your experience, from what you've seen, would you say that it is really kind of like it comes in hand with the recession intensifying and the recession being upon us, like, and the general economic crisis that is happening in the world, with like studios not willing to take risks because they do not have the capacity to maybe lose money on like a lot of projects?
I think that's a really good point, because if they're not willing to take risks on the movies they make, they're definitely not willing to risk taking risks on the advertising for those movies they haven't taken risks on.
Yeah.
But I think, like you say, I think that could definitely be related to let's tighten our belts and do what's good for, to keep cash flowing through.
We're definitely feeling the heat because we're coming off of a pandemic and now 2 industry strikes. And the studios are obviously having to alter their budgets as a reaction to that. And that trickles down to us, where it's like either they're not hiring as many people to do a certain job, or they can't pay as much as they used to for the time being, because the whole industry got like a real dick punch, pardon my French, and everyone's going to have to take a bit of that, take a bite of that shit sandwich. I'm hoping we're not creating a new base level, because that's the fear, is like, all right, we used to get paid this, now we get paid this, and that's just the way it's going to be. It might be a little bit low for a while. I'm hoping that eventually things will pick up and that rates will go up and budgets will go up. But these things take time.
If you were to look at the progression of the movie advertising budgets, it would seem like the market is growing. That, however, is not true. The costs are growing, while the budgets cannot follow suit. As far back as 2016, a Hollywood producer who asked to remain anonymous said, "In the paid media space, there are no bargains anymore," to Variety. A studio marketer, also anonymously, confessed that when you spend as much as we are spending on these big movies, you cannot afford to not open, and you can't use your marketing budget to experiment with something new. Another thing that influenced the way trailers are made and utilized is the gradual expansion of the marketing cycle. With the increased saturation of the market due to the growth of the industry as a whole, one way to upstage everyone in the competition for your butt in the seat on the opening weekend is to get an early start. And this, in turn, means often getting started on the promotional material before the movie itself is ready. As Mark Woolen said, we come in at different stages, when there's just a script, or when they're shooting and there are a lot of dailies, or when there's a finished film. When a film is fully done, you can make sure you're getting the tone right and capture that vision. On the other hand, it's fantastic to have the freedom of dailies for when you need a few more frames of this close-up or that shot. That's why you sometimes see things in trailers that don't end up in the movie.
So for theatrical, when a studio is going to make a trailer, sometimes it depends on where you get in the process. Sometimes they only have dailies, but by design, sometimes they just don't have as much to show because they could be in the middle of production. And if you only have dailies on a certain number of scenes, that can dictate what a teaser can or can't be. But typically we'll get the footage, right? Either in the form of dailies or in the form of rough cuts. We'll get on the phone with the client. We'll talk through any direction that they have, any insight they have, try to nail down, do they know the audience? Is this broad? Is it specific? Are there pieces of the story that we should stay away from? Basically, they'll just download anything and everything from a strategic point of view that they have.
Yeah, because if I understand correctly,
That makes sense.
for like the majority of projects, you start working before even the rough cut is done. You just work with the dailies. So
Yep.
when you start working, you have no idea whether the movie is gonna be good. You just like hope that it's gonna be good, possibly.
Yeah. There's a famous story from years ago where a company had cut the trailer for the Christopher Nolan movie Memento, and they were asked how they did the trailer given the way that the chronology of the film is. They said, "Oh, we had no idea about that. We got in the dailies. We just assembled it chronologically. We didn't realize it was all going to happen backwards."
Sometimes we do not have the movie. No, that's true.
So they're just trying their best, and they do not have like the final cut, the final edit. And obviously, while it's going like through the cycle of like feedback and edits, it's gonna change a lot in some cases.
Oh, and then people ask us, why is that in the trailer? It wasn't in the movie. It's like, well, when we finished the trailer, we worked on a trailer. Another guy at the office cut a trailer for Dark Water, and it was near finishing. The studio was happy with it, and then the director was like, "These aren't the takes I'm using in the movie." So now we had to go back. The editor had to go back and recut it with all the takes in the movie, and some of them were not as good as what he used. I mean, from the director's point, that's what the director wanted.
Yeah, but they didn't work for the trailer.
Exactly. So some little timings were off.
So sometimes we get a rough cut of the movie. 50% of the time, we don't even get a rough cut. We get to start getting dailies as soon as they start shooting. We're rarely, if ever, working from a final cut of a feature.
This approach, then, can lead to movie trailers not being representative of the movie, with no one to blame, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think trailers now, some of them can get really, really sort of stylish and kind of like, fancy is not the right word, but they're really making like this a piece unto itself. My friend Rick, who we did a movie trailer podcast for a couple of years, which we haven't recorded in a while, but he says often that trailer editing is one of the only times when the editing isn't supposed to be invisible, because that's the classic sort of film sort of thing. Like if the editing's doing its job, you don't notice it. But for trailers, it can be the exact opposite, where it's like, whoa, someone like edited the crap out of this trailer. And there are a lot of trailers that are like that, where they're very stylish. And sometimes it aligns with what the film actually is, and sometimes maybe they went a little bit further than what the movie is, and then it built this expectation that it's just, you can't uphold with a 90-minute film or a 2-hour film what someone did in 2.5 minutes or 2 minutes, because you can do anything when you have all that raw footage and only this much to show.
For instance, in 2022, 2 fans of Ana de Armas filed a lawsuit against Universal, saying that the trailer for Yesterday was deceptive. See, the trailer showed a scene with de Armas that was originally supposed to be in the movie, but her part was ultimately cut because the love triangle thing was interfering with the envisioned flow of the story. Richard Curtis, the writer for the movie, described it the following way: "That was a very traumatic cut because she was brilliant in it. I mean, really radiant. And that turned out to be the problem. I think the audience likes the story and goes with that, and it works out well. What we'd originally done was I don't think to describe it too much, but Ana de Armas as a complicating factor when he arrived in LA for the first time, and I think the audience did not like the fact that his eyes even strayed. The point is, Ana de Armas' part was cut in post, and the trailers have not been altered accordingly. So when fans discovered that she was actually not in the movie after already paying to rent it out, they decided to sue. Universal tried to argue that a trailer should not be seen as commercial speech, seeing as it is an artistic, expressive work, an argument that the judge rightfully rejected, instead stating Universal is correct that trailers involve some creativity and editorial discretion, but this creativity does not outweigh the commercial nature of a trailer. At its core, a trailer is an advertisement designed to sell a movie by providing consumers with a preview of the movie. And this case is not an outlier.
Sorry, a few years ago, I worked on the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling, and someone tried unsuccessfully to sue the studio because they said the trailer did not accurately reflect the film, and they felt cheated when they saw the film, that it wasn't. They thought it was going to be like Fast and Furious, and they felt like the trailer was deceptive. I think I like the trailer I cut. I think it's fairly organic to the film. But someone asked me one time about a trailer that I'd done and they didn't like the film. I said, look, I am not responsible for your enjoyment of a movie. I'm not. That's really, you don't pay me enough to ensure that you enjoy the film that I'm advertising. I have my job and I do my job. The filmmakers have their job. It's their job to make the film whatever they want it to be so that you can enjoy it or not enjoy it. I often describe, I may have said this in the other podcast, but like I often describe it as like, I feel like I'm a lawyer defending a client to the best of my abilities. I'm not responsible for whether that client is innocent or guilty. I just have to do the best job I can to represent them.
Finally, if you want to market your movie properly so that, people like go and actually see it, you typically aim for a green band trailer. Most trailers that are shown in cinemas in the US come with a green band label, meaning the MPAA have rated it acceptable for viewers of all ages. While most movies have a green band trailer, if they're intended for a mature audience, this can limit what the preview can show. Basically, no fucks, no grotesque violence, no sex, no sleep, bus, club, another club. But what do you do if the movie has all of those? How do you represent it properly?
The MPAA is a whole other topic unto itself. There's so many stories behind what is allowed and what is not allowed. They're a very conservative company, but now because they changed trailers to be able to show with movies of the same rating, then it's lightened up. But yeah, it does. But I think once you're a professional editor, you sort of internalize some of the rules. You're like, okay, well, this shot won't make it in because of this. This shot won't make it in because of this. But you still get surprised, like, oh, really? We can't show that? So like a couple stories I have. So like in the US, after the Columbine school shooting, which was like late 90s, MPAA suddenly got really sensitive about guns. So you couldn't have a shot where you're shooting guns into the screen. You watch the first Matrix film, the very end is Agent and then, Neo dodging. Matrix Reloaded, you won't see any guns being shot into the screen. If you watch the international trailers for Matrix Reloaded, you will, because MPAA doesn't have jurisdiction outside of the US. And there's other stories like editor was working on a trailer for Fearless, the Jet Li film, and there was a shot where he kicks a guy in the head. They had to MPAA, they had cut away the frames after the foot made impact because that's too violent. They also had to make the sound less crunchy or something like that, which, mind you, this was before the sound was mixed. So who knows, they probably just mixed it back up anyway. But MPAA said, we can't approve this, it's too loud, it's too violent.
I mean, things are more lax these days. There's a lot more foul language in trailers. I mean, depending on where you see it and what time you see it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had one trailer for HBO that ended with the narrator saying, does he want this or does he want to burn the whole fucking thing to the ground? And that was great for after 10 p.m. But we had to do a version that they would play before 10 p.m. And that was just, language. I mean, in trailers, you'll always have a hard time with nudity, but the killing is less and less. Like it used to be like, oh, you can't point a gun right at camera. I mean, we've done stuff like I did with this one trailer where this motorcycle zooms by a woman and her skirt goes up and she's wearing very skimpy panties.
Mm-hmm.
But in finishing, they had to paint on more.
More? Oh my God.
Yeah. So they're more like, not boxers, obviously, but more like a bathing suit rather than a bikini. You know what I mean? It's just kind of really, it's like for 3 frames.
Yeah, but also that's not showing anything.
No, it's not. For the trailer for that, there's a shot where Mila Jovovich dives off a building and she's just wearing those bandages.
Yeah.
And so you can see butt all the way,
Mm-hmm.
They had to put bike shorts on her in finishing.
Oh
not
God.
just a bathing suit, but actual thigh length bike shorts. I remember working on a movie, this is a long time ago. It was the hell was it called? It was called I Got the Hookup. It was a
Mhm.
Master P movie, and we had a great button. This old lady picks up the phone and something like, and she's and it was just kind of like, who the fuck is this? And it's coming out of an old lady. It was hysterical.
Yeah.
And of course we couldn't use it, so we were like, okay, what if we just take out fuck and put, you know, the cartoon asterisks and stuff coming out of her
Yeah.
mouth? And then the MPA is like, no, that's censorship. We're like, well, what if you put a beep there? Nope, censorship. And it's like,
Oh my god.
yeah, but now it's
Yeah.
like, it's just funny how things change.
The other fun thing about the Carrie trailer is if you see, like, there's a part in it where the screen, they have a wipe in the frame when the blood is poured on her, and it wipes the frame red. And although in the movie it does kind of, the lights all go red, they kind of go red after that. But I think they had to do that because the MPAA has to approve all trailers for general audience viewing. Doesn't allow you to show actual red blood. You can't, you know, for a regular green band trailer, which is meant for all audiences, you can't show blood.
So are the marketing departments at fault for trailers being, you know, like that? Or is it the MPA prudes?
Also, you know, in America, we're super prudish when it comes to that. I mean, we'll have bodies flying all over the place, blood, guts, bullet holes, but you show one boob and it's like, oh, X-rated.
Not exactly, because, you know, even with all that taken into consideration, the majority of the trailers today feel very formulaic.
In a world where every trailer looks the same.
It's very like formulaic. It's like how they say like Mr. Beast sort of has like optimized the video format for retention, and like treated this thing like this thing to be consumed by people rather than like a thing to be entertained or to connect to them emotionally.
The majority of movies follow a 3-act structure that we are all familiar with, and trailers, being mini movies, do too, with, of course, a few tweaks.
The difference is, trailers frequently start high with a cold open, end before the resolution, and sometimes include a button for one last joke or final action scene.
The structure is arguably not bad in and of itself, since the familiarity of it allows us as viewers to navigate complex stories and get overviews of full-on feature films within the allocated 2 minutes.
If a movie trailer just is, you know, sort of by the numbers, that can be serviceable but not very exciting. But the example I was talking about to someone recently is like music. Yeah, Evan says, you know, trailers have a format. And most often they do. Like, music has a format. There's a lyric, there's a chorus, there's a lyric, there's a chorus, there's a bridge, there's a lyric. Like, and yet we like these things. We listen to Taylor Swift. We like the format of that song, even if the song is different. It has different chords and whatever. We do like that format. It seems to work well for people.
And trailers have, you know, historically been formulaic. I mean, just take a look at those from the 60s through the 80s. Sorry. But here's a problem. Those that stick to the structure with little to no deviation seem extremely repetitive and uninspired due to salience of movies in general and, as I've previously mentioned, endless optimization forced upon the industry by the recession of cinema and budget constraints. So if both the editors and the studios know that trailers like that can be perceived as boring and therefore will not be able to stick out and attract attention, why do they keep producing them? First of all, not all movies can exactly lend themselves to an artistic rendering.
For example, this trailer for The Misfits looks like a very typical heist film. Aside from the actors and the setting, there's nothing in this trailer which feels novel, from the premise to the character archetypes.
Keep pushing, keep...
This is why I think they have to show so much more of it. They're trying to sell a slightly different flavor of chocolate ice cream to someone who's eaten dozens of varieties. This is why the trailer plays out so many set pieces and uses stylish, over-the-top editing. When something isn't unique, the answer is oftentimes to up the salesmanship and presentation. I think this is a huge reason a lot of movie trailers show so many spoilers, because the films aren't as hooky, and therefore need to show more to differentiate them at all.
I think it all depends on the studio and the filmmaker involved. because I don't think anyone's ready yet to take a big tentpole movie,
Mhm.
no matter how bad it is, and try and make something artistic out of the trailer, like a Godzilla King Kong thing, like the latest one that came out was just. I mean, I didn't think it was a wonderful trailer, but it hit all the notes. So nothing to take away from the editor, but just studio wise, that's exactly what that movie was. So the big, huge budget things, I don't think are going to take risks. It all depends on the filmmaker. And the studio, like A24 will continue to do things that are more quirky. Also, certain films lend themselves to that. You can't make something too quirky out of Godzilla and King Kong. It is what it is. That's that beast.
Yeah.
So it'll look really weird and like you're trying too hard if you go off the rails with it.
Secondly, the answer is quite simple. It works. And as Socrates once said, if it works, it, well, works.
I remember having another guy I worked with a long time ago. He cut a wonderful trailer, but he was having trouble with the client. It wasn't going so well because he was being very meticulous with it and very artistic with it. And I remember my boss calling him and saying, listen, I see this, I noticed this, you hit that beat, you did this sort of thing, I get it, I see it all. The client sees it all, but it's not what they need, so your skill is intact. So, take that to heart. It's like, just because they're, steamrolling all these little intricate things you built doesn't mean you didn't build them. You didn't come up with cool, clever stuff to do.
Part of like the running joke in the movie trailer industry, or I don't know if it's a running joke, but anyway, version 1 is the one that editors usually love the most because that's the one that's like their thing, and then it gets just changed and changed and changed and changed and changed until it's version 40R, which means they went to version 40, then they added another 18 versions on top of that one, and then no one's happy probably because everyone's had their hands in the pie, and it's not like a thing that was like crafted, it was a thing that was like optimized, I think.
I'm all for mixing it up and trying new things, but if the audience doesn't respond to it in a positive way, then it's not really servicing its needs. The needs is, people need to like it, enjoy it, and also feel compelled to go and watch the thing that you're advertising.
Well, I mean, you have to appeal to the audience to get money for those investors. So it does come down to numbers. It comes down to money making. It comes down to, and it's more than the last decade. I've been doing this for close to 30 years now, and I've seen a shift. And it must be even more insane for like my bosses who've been doing this for a much longer time, who have seen even more a shift to a quote unquote commercialization of it, or a I don't know what you call it, like, well, playing to the numbers, because
trying to optimize profit essentially.
Exactly. That's why I tell anyone, the younger editors and the assistants who want to edit, I'm like, just remember, always keep version 1. I have somewhere on VHS, I have version 1s that I cut that I look at and go, wow, I'm surprised I still have a job. But I tell them to keep, because that version 1, that's your baby. That's yours. And the studio or even your producer will make you kill your baby.
We run into the same problem over and over again, with the industry currently really going through it and trailers being commercial at their very heart. Nobody is willing to take risks and potentially lose hundreds of millions of dollars. This kind of entraps everyone in an endless cycle of finding a new trailer trend and bidding it to death, all combined with the traditional structure. As Dr. Flashpoint puts it, I think Hollywood and their trailer houses have learned the most effective way with marketing films, so sadly I doubt we'd get anything that interesting through trailers. Other fan trailer editors and movie fans have poked fun at the formula in a variety of ways. For one, endless recuts that show off how by utilizing the traditional structure and employing an aesthetic that is typical to this or that genre, you can turn The Shining into a family comedy or Mary Poppins into a horror movie. Sometimes it's actually a way to right the wrongs of studios, like in the case of Michael Sellers. This man went viral about like a decade ago for creating a movie trailer that was, according to some, better than those put out by Disney itself. Fans were suffering through the promotion, but held out hope that the Super Bowl ad was going to be a big moment where Disney started getting it right. That night, fueled by frustration and perhaps a few margaritas, my buddy Mark Linthicum and I decided to download everything Disney had put out to date and make our trailer. The trailer then went on to propel Sellers' career, as well as get him praise from the movie's actual director, who tweeted, "Great fan trailer, they get it." I'll tell you more. Series like literal trailers and honest trailers have been a hit, partly for the same reason.
You know his look. You know his name.
Beetlejuice.
And if you say it 3 times, he'll show up for 17 minutes of a 90-minute film.
People now recognize the bland, formulaic nature of the majority of the movie trailers, as well as the trickery that goes into getting your butt into the seat on the opening weekend.
This guy, Andy Signor, who created the series, and he came up with it after watching The Phantom Menace re-released in 3D. And he was watching the trailer for that movie, which was showing you only the cool parts, and he thought to himself, what would it be like if that trailer actually showed you what was in the movie? So, council meetings, talking, more talking. So that's how the concept came around, was from that movie.
With people literally shouting in the streets about how they are tired of the trailer equivalents of boring beige millennial houses, the studios have definitely gotten the memo, but they are still not willing to take risks, seeing as being perceived as boring, yawning, sloppy, lazy is still better than being bankrupt.
And I think that, yeah, that happens. And then when the thing makes money, then they're like, well, it worked. But, well, there's no parallel universe where we released the version 1 trailer and saw that also worked. So it's like self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know.
With production and advertising costs soaring through the sky, and the number of movies released by big studios who could previously afford to take the risk decreasing, not even to mention the supposed death of mid-budget cinema, it seems like all opportunities to be fresh, fun, and creative are gone. Video might have killed the radio star, but the 21st century let's optimize everything and monitor the customer's every move brand of late-stage capitalism is currently trying to kill the already weak and historically torn between art and commerce movie trailer.
So what would you say is, like, in general, your attitude towards the last 10 years of change of trailers in general? Like, what have you noticed? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the changes?
I'm
Do you see a bright future? Okay.
I mean, they're always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, as far as the editors are concerned, there's always going to be a certain kind of art to it, and even to some of the clients. But the clients are less and less using their guts. You can definitely see an old guard and a new guard. I mean, a lot of the people I used to work with don't work in the industry anymore. They've aged out, I guess. You know what I mean? And there was a lot less testing and a lot more gut. And now it's depending on the movie, it's all testing, it's all calculating.
So, have you figured it out, my fellow Sherlocks? Who's to blame? I'm just gonna do what one of our economics professors did when I was getting my undergrad.
That's right, I made yet another video to turn out to secretly be all about capitalism. You thought I couldn't do it, but I did!
The very thing that birthed the trailer industry and filled it with the brightest and most artistic editing minds is now suffocating it with endless optimization and discarding creativity and artistic expression in favor of this bland, formulaic mind gum that is appealing to virtually nobody. Arguably what it has always done ever since the first trailer and the NSS monopoly. But the human spirit is nothing if not indomitable, and the gems that we have gotten over the century of trailers, existing, have been results of artists, whether directors or editors, struggling against the normal and the optimal in order to bring art to life. Also, I hope everyone is enjoying the camera quality. I think it's gonna fry my fucking laptop, but at least it looks really cool. But all is not lost yet. I mean, we have A24, and their trailers are actually cool.
In a world where art struggles with late-stage capitalism.
If you were to actually look at A24 trailers, you would find that they're not exactly stepping away from the formula. Rather, they're like sticking one leg out of the imaginary circle of formulaic blandness.
In researching this video, I came to the conclusion all movie trailers fall into roughly 4 categories, which I based on what the audience knows about the film after they finish watching the trailer. Timeline, setup, characters, mood and tone.
Almost a half of A24 trailers are formulaic to the bone. They show you the setup and they give you an idea of what the movie is going to be about. The difference, however, lies within the perceived novelty of the premises that those trailers flash at us, as well as the current zeitgeist that declared A24 the savior of mid-budget cinema and weird kids with too many movies logged in on their Letterboxd accounts. And yes, I see you, I feel you, I am with you. Also, I will not be saying Zeitgeist because I think that is a disgrace. Was ist ja los mit euch? Das geht ja gar nicht. Das ist ja gar nicht normal, meine fucking Güte. Now, whether you agree with the notion that A24 is propelling cinema, or rather trying to get it out of that mud hole that optimization capitalism has dragged it into, one thing is for certain, they definitely are doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the parts of the market that are neglected by big studios, and are actually taking the risks that those big studios jump away from in fear of losing hundreds of millions of dollars.
I actually did a video essay about A24 movie trailers, which I know it's about A24, but I think that I said that in that essay that not only are A24 really good at making trailers which don't tell you a lot about the movie or spoil things.
With A24, yeah, I think like there is a certain formula, which is create that atmosphere, have that repeating sound effect.
Yeah, the flaming head. There's always a flaming head.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, exactly. So, but you know, if you use the formula in service of the film, it's different than using it in service of the studio, if that makes sense.
I also think it works good with like A24's overall branding, with just being able to show you the premise and then being like, it's an A24 movie, go see it.
Right, that's exactly, they have that niche. You know, it's not just a horror movie, it's an A24 horror movie. So you know it's not going to be Freddy or Jason running around slaughtering people. It's going to be something, well, you'd think that it's going to be something thought-provoking and interesting to watch and creepy, you know, and not all just jump scares and gore.
As Costa phrases it, looking ahead, A24 continues to shape the cinematic landscape with its recent projects. And they're not alone in that sentiment. With projects like Moonlight, Priscilla, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and Hereditary, the studio has a say in what direction cinema, and as a result, cinema advertising, is headed in. Even if by doing that, they ruin my evening by imposing the wretched beast that is Longlegs upon my eyes and ears.
Yeah, Longlegs come to mind. Have you seen Longlegs?
Yeah.
The trailer was so good.
There is the Golden Trailer Awards has an award called the Golden Fleece, which I have forever said they should rename it the Trojan Horse Award, where you create something and then people go to the theater and go like, wait, this is not at all what I thought it was. No, but you spent your money.
And we also have streaming platforms that do not need to make an immediate return on their movies. And despite them producing a lot of stuff that is made to act as a mind-numbing second screen, they have more leeway with trailers and more potential to do the weird artistic shit we supposedly enjoy.
If you have a mid-budget movie, you know, it might get a mediocre turnout in theaters. You still have the advertising budget and whatnot. And then it's like, but it's like, the risk is bigger. There's more money to be lost that way. I mean, that's why we have streaming. You know, all those mid-budget movies, they're now on Netflix. But I got to tell you, you know, like the trailers they put out, even for streaming, they're cutting them like they're high-end, the best movies ever made.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, why people watch them, because they do a good job with it. they're marketing.
While the current day state of the trailer may look bleak and bland and even cloud your judgment, to the point of where you start believing that at some point of time, those mini-movies were completely devoid of their inherently commercial nature and therefore uniquely artistic. It is important to look at stuff with a little more objectivity. I mean, the very same, oh, but trailers used to be so good before, delusion is what got me into the black hole that is this pile of research. In retrospect, of course, there have been better times for the movie trailer as an art form, but the issues we are now running into are indicative of the problems that society at large is being faced with due to late-stage capitalism. Whereas the artistic side of it may be suppressed at large, I don't see the end of the movie trailer on the horizon, because the human desire to create and tell stories in virtually all formats that our grubby little hands can reach has survived worse things than Disney buying up everything and production costs soaring through the sky. Love and art always win. Also, I'm so still mad about long legs. Also, over the course of making this video, I was like, how hard can it be to make a trailer? So I did my own, and it's, yeah, it turns out it's pretty fucking hard. You can watch it, I'll link it in the description, or like in the card. Yeah.
In a world where I'm taking your hard-earned money.
Hi, people of the internet. First of all, huge shout out to all the lovely guests that held my hand while walking me through the scary insider catacombs of the trailer industry and shared their valuable experience with me and, as a result, all of you. Second, I am now introducing channel memberships. Don't worry though, nothing is going to change for the people that cannot or are not willing to join. Like, I'm not going to be charging anyone for like daring to exist in my internet vicinity. Now, I'm introducing only one tier that is going to be €2. That's something over $2. I feel like $2.2 maybe for those whose bills are green. Within the tier, you will get the following: early access to videos, so a few days before they get released to the wider public, postcast type videos a few days to maybe a week after the video is released, where I reflect on your comments, talk a little bit more about the behind the scenes stuff, and also briefly cover topics that could not fit into the original video, because there is a lot. I am nothing if not a yapper, in case anyone forgot. And also a shout out / thanks in the ending credits of the video. I'm still figuring out how to make those cool like members only custom stickers for comments, but once I do, you will get a nice little collection of exclusive stickers / comment badges with my cat that is now very ungratefully biting me. This will help support the channel and improve the production quality. But once again, nothing is going to change for you if you decide against joining. There are still going to be community posts, and there are still obviously going to be long form videos that I do. That's pretty much it. Yeah, thanks a lot for 4K followers. That's like an actual shit ton of people. I really enjoy making these deep dives, and I'm specifically really proud of this project and the research and insight I feel like I've provided. And I'm also really grateful to have an audience that engages with my shit and brings up great points in the comments, and even helps me figure out the whole American movie ticket prices debacle. So yeah, if you made it to this point, make sure to put the word chickpeas in your comments to confuse the ones who did not. That's it. Bye.